Okay.
Okay, completely nervous today. Um, Welcome back to the second session this morning. I'm just going to hand over to Ross Balharrie to talk about Indyreads, which is an absolutely fabulous ebook platform that I hope you all get to enjoy using very, very soon and sharing with your clients. Over to Ross.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. Can you see the slide now? It's fantastic. Okay, before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation, on whose land I am broadcasting from today, and pay my respects to past, present, and emerging elders. So it's wonderful to have this opportunity to present the Indyreads local e-content management platform today, because you are indeed a key professional demographic that we would like to reach out to, because fundamentally Indyreads is all about content and new streams of content that we'd like to introduce to public libraries and your members. Okay, so today you will hopefully walk away with a better understanding of the Indyreads project, in particular the capabilities of the platform, the reason why we embarked on the project, and the project aims. Also, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of the content and how it complements your existing digital collections. Okay, so fundamentally, Indyreads is an ebook platform, but it can also host audio content and it can host video content. What distinguishes Indyreads from other platforms in use across the state in public libraries is the collection that we're developing, also the platform's enhanced functionality, specifically the ability for public libraries to be able to upload their own content onto the platform and to apply digital rights management where necessary. And also the bespoke license agreement that we've developed for this project, which public libraries can use to license content directly from communities. The platform was piloted in 2017 at Leichhardt and Parramatta Library. And at that time, we were interested in seeing if it was possible for the State Library of New South Wales to provide the public library network with the technical infrastructure and the legal framework to allow libraries to become aggregators of community content, as well as introducing new streams of content to public library collections. So very briefly, the Indyreads platform is supplied by a Spanish library tech company called Adillo. It provides library patrons with 3 ways to access the collection. There's the web browser portal, and this allows patrons to read, listen to titles, create reading lists, add reviews and ratings to individual books, make suggestions for purchase, as well as manage holds and reservations. There's also a dedicated Indyreads branded Apple and Android app that can be downloaded through Google Play and the Apple Store. And the third way that clients can discover and in some instances download or reserve content is through the catalogue. So basic integration, a library would upload the MARC records and there would be a link that goes through to the Indyreads applications. There's a number of library management systems, Circe, Dynex and Aurora, where we've achieved deep web services API integration, and that allows a client to borrow a title from within the catalogue and also to place a reservation. And we're working with the other library management system vendors to achieve similar deep integration. And hopefully for Libero and Spidus, this may be achieved in the second part of 2020. Okay, so it's probably worthwhile that I provide a little bit of background context as to the origins, the genesis of Indyreads. It can basically be traced back to 2010, and some of you may recall that's when ebooks, the popularity with the general public skyrocketed. Now at the time, the big 5 publishers, it was 6 at that time, 2 of them merged, but they were grappling with the concept of e-lending in public libraries. Some declined to make content available, and I think Hachette To this day, that's still their strategy, whilst others explored a variety of access models ranging from perpetual one copy, one loan arrangements through to metered access models such as 12 months, 26 loans, and then it expires and you have to purchase the content again. One US library service had an interesting response to this dilemma of ebook availability. The manager of Douglas County Libraries, Jamie LaRue, frustrated by the stance of the Big Five publishers, decided to look for alternative sources of content. And he discovered that there had been a seismic shift in the publishing landscape. Advances in technology had democratized the means of publishing and distribution. Independent publishers and self-publishing were thriving. And unlike the Big Five publishers, the independent and self-publishing sectors were happy to sell content to Douglas County Libraries under terms and conditions which were more favourable and certainly more sustainable for public libraries. The US project inspired the State Library of New South Wales and other libraries in North America to investigate the concept of library as aggregator and the opportunities to introduce new streams of content to communities. It's interesting to note that only a few months ago, the peak body for the state libraries in the US reiterated the call for public libraries to explore opportunities to engage with independent publishers and self-published authors in response to the ongoing issues with the license strategies of some of the big publishers. So this is still a concern after 10 years. So what's the story with self-publishing and independent publishers? To determine what content licensing opportunities exist for Australian public libraries, we need to take a closer look at the publishing landscape. What we know is that the publishing industry has been radically changed by the impact of technology over the past 2 decades, like many industries. Traditional legacy publishers are no longer the gatekeepers for publishing and distribution. Nowadays, a small independent publisher or a self-published author can easily publish and distribute work globally in both print and digital formats. Unfortunately, the publishing industry sales figures from sources such as Nielsen do not capture the digital sales for self-published titles and miss many smaller publishers. And as such, we're in the dark with regards to the exact figure of annual ebook sales. The data that we have suggests that ebooks have been tracking at about 20% of annual sales for a number of years. However, this actually reflects traditional publishing sector's data. It has been speculated by a prominent US data analyst that the majority of annual ebook sales actually are not recorded, and indeed they eclipse the ebook sales for the traditional publishing sector. We also know that readers' preferences are changing. Genre fiction readers have embraced ebooks. 90% of romance sales and 75% of science fiction sales are reportedly in digital format. And whilst I don't have the figures for crime fiction or horror, one could speculate that it's likely to follow a similar trajectory. So that's really interesting figure for public libraries when we think of the development of our collections, as a proportion of these titles are likely to be published exclusively in the digital format, particularly if they are self-published. Now combine this with the fact that 32% of Amazon's bestseller list are actually self-published titles. It's also interesting to look at online reading platforms such as Wattpad, which offers a combination of mainly free content, but there's also some paywall access content. Wattpad has 80 million users around the world, and they spend each month 22 billion minutes reading the content on that platform. So as you can see, self-publishing is definitely a happening scene, and it has been for quite some time. Within the communities you serve, there will undoubtedly be many people that are purchasing this content from vendors such as Amazon. They're probably not even aware that it's self-published material, but fundamentally what they're after is a good read. Sorry. Okay, so domestically, there's also some interesting trends occurring. And this graph on this particular slide tries to demonstrate that. So if we look to the left, we can see a box, and that represents the traditional mainstream large publishers. Now, research undertaken by Macquarie University and Melbourne University indicates that Australian genre fiction is shifting from traditional publishers across to the self-publishing sector. Academic Emmett Stinson also noted that the publishing of Australian literary fiction and poetry has moved from large traditional publishing houses to small independent publishers. The fact that small press books dominate the shortlist of the most recent Man Booker Prize would also suggest similar trends are occurring overseas. Now the question is, does this content flow through to traditional aggregator platforms for purchase? And if it does, are libraries purchasing it? The dilemma for public libraries is it appears that the combined factors of ebook aggregator platform fees, metered access licensing, and the higher cost of ebooks when compared to the equivalent title in print has had an overall negative impact on the diversity of content in the digital collections of public libraries. Due to the associated costs of delivering and maintaining a predominantly metered access collection, public libraries can really only generate a reasonable return on investment from a monetary perspective by selecting the most popular content. The observation has also been backed up by the latest research by Rebecca Giblin and her colleagues, who have been studying the impact of e-lending on Australian public libraries. On this particular slide, there's a number of quotes from that particular report, and I'll make a direct link to that report available to Alan to share with you. So the cultural cost for our communities is that our digital collections will reflect a narrower range than what is offered in our print collection. Popular bestsellers will be purchased to the detriment of emerging authors and independent publishers, whilst best-selling content from the self-publishing ecosystem will also be missed due to issues around availability, but also an awareness of the importance of this content stream. I think it's fair to say that if public libraries do not explore the opportunities available to provide our communities with the best examples of independent and self-published content, we risk diluting our relevance to an unknown segment of our community, which have already embraced and engaging with this content. So a primary aim of Indyreads is to ensure that public libraries can continue to offer their clients a diverse collection of quality Australian and overseas digital works. And to achieve this aim, we are building a collection which complements your current offerings. So let's dive into the content that is currently on the Indyreads platform. As you would have deduced by now, Indyreads will contain a collection of self-published material. Now, one of the challenges that we face going forward with the project is to dispel the perception that self-published content is purely vanity press and represents universally poor quality content. Now, as stated just before, 32% of titles on Amazon's bestseller list are self-published. And there are numerous examples, some of which are on the slide here, of self-published content which has been picked up by traditional publishers due to the established success of the author. There are also many successful authors that have decided to stay within the self-publishing ecosystem. The challenge facing libraries is how do we identify the best examples of self-published content? To solve this issue, the State Library of New South Wales used the bestseller list supplied by one of the main self-publishing aggregators, Smashwords. The titles were then manually checked against Goodreads with selections based on a combination of the number of written reviews and star ratings. We hope to eventually automate this process using an API. So you will currently find approximately 1,000 self-published titles on the Indyreads platform, predominantly listed under Smashwords if you undertook a publishing search. There's a sizable collection of science fiction, fantasy, romance, crime, and horror titles on the Indyreads platform. The authors represented are primarily international in scope, but there are a number of Australian authors also. It was interesting to discover through this journey that there's a number of very prestigious and long-running genre fiction journals which are now self-published. So I assume these titles were once print publications that perhaps you would pick up from your newsagents, etc. They have shifted to an exclusive digital online model, and they're using Smashwords as a mechanism to sell their content to interested readers. Some of these journals have been around for many decades, and they have won prestigious international awards for the various genre categories. These include the science fiction magazine Interzone, the Australian speculative fiction magazine Oralis, and the horror magazine Grimdark and Black Static. We have, where possible, purchased the complete sets of these journals, and we'll continue to purchase, obviously, new issues as they're released. These journals contain many authors that are now well established, and they were given that opportunity by writing their short stories for such magazines. Okay, so another category which we have been focusing on is small to mid-size Australian published content, but also international examples of the best independent publishers. During the pilot, we reached out to a small sample of independent Australian publishers to gauge their interest in selling content directly to the State Library for this initiative. And what we discovered is that there was a great deal of enthusiasm for the initiative, and several of the publishers indicated that this was the first time they were selling digital content to public libraries. Some of the publishers we have licensed content from include the Queensland University Press, CSIRO, Fremantle Press, Affirm Press, the Lifted Brow, Black Brow Books, Seizure, Wakefield Press, and the Review of Australian Fiction. At present, we're working with around 20 Australian publishers of genre, non-fiction and literary titles, and going forward we will reach out to more Australian publishers and license that content for the platform. Another key concept is the development of a statewide collection of international classics, modern literary titles, plus award-winning titles across a diverse range of genre categories. We currently have well over 3,000 titles ranging from a very broad category of authors such as Richard Flanagan, Melissa Lukashenko, Sally Morgan, Tim Winton, Margaret Atwood, John Steinbeck, Jane Austen, Leo Tolstoy, through to ancient classics by Herodotus and Aristotle. This collection has been licensed under perpetual access, so we have it obviously in perpetuity, so it's a great asset for the public library network and the communities in New South Wales. We will also be exploring opportunities to develop collections in languages other than English. So currently we have 3 small collections, a small collection of Spanish titles, Chinese titles, and Vietnamese titles. What we hope to do in the coming months is to reach out to the language specialists in the public library network and bring them on board to help develop these collections going forward. Another collection which is in its infancy but will expand relates to graphic novels. We're fortunate that we have been able to purchase an interesting and potentially a sizable collection. It's an international publisher, so what we would hope to do going forward is to identify Australian graphic novel publishers and authors and bring that content onto the platform too. But this collection should resonate with obviously young adults, in your libraries. Okay, another collection worth highlighting is the professional development collection. There's some 100 titles which are available on the platform, predominantly from the American Library Association and Rowman and Littlefield. It covers a really broad range of subjects, from collection development, readers advisory, library management, library technology, makerspaces, and so forth. So I recommend that you have a look at those titles in the collection too. Okay, so where are we at with regards to the rollout? We're still currently in phase 1, and phase 1 is all about connecting your library management systems with the Indyreads platform to enable patron authentication so that your users can download content. We've currently configured 50% of the library management systems, sorry, not the library management systems, library services across the state, and they are listed on this particular slide. They cover the main library management systems, and a number of these services have actually gone live. Now, the intent with training was to provide training at the State Library, but also where possible to go on site, to visit your library services, regional nodes, etc., and to provide training. Now, unfortunately, in the current environment, that's no longer possible. So we are pivoting to providing training kits to libraries so that they can undertake self-paced training. And we will also deliver support through Blue Jeans, FAQ sessions and information sessions, which we will schedule in the coming weeks. Okay, so phase 2 of the project relates to local studies. For those libraries which are interested, it is possible where you can upload, digitize assets from your local studies collections, primarily oral histories and transcripts, manuscripts, maybe material from historical societies, and perhaps videos that have local relevance onto the platform. It's not a suitable solution for images or newspapers or maps, and it's fundamentally a hosting and distribution platform, not a preservation solution for digital assets. During the pilot phase, Parramatta and Leichhardt Library uploaded a range of content from their collection, and they were particularly satisfied with the Indyreads platform's capacity to host and distribute oral histories. Phase 2, we're looking at probably making that available to public libraries, certainly in the second half of this year, perhaps towards the end. It depends on how quickly we can configure all the libraries across the state in phase 1. Okay, so phase 3, we will focus on licensing content directly from community authors and local historical societies. Once again, this will be opt-in. Now, we have been in conversation with colleagues in the United States where public library engagement with self-published authors has been underway for a number of years, with initiatives such as Selfie and Indy's Author Day and the soon-to-be famous Illinois Author Project. There are many examples of library-sponsored writing competitions and networking days which bring community authors and editors and local publishers together, as well as writing workshops. They even run a National Library Award for Best Emerging Writers in a variety of categories. So there's some really exciting stuff happening in the US, and the benefit for us is that we don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. We can learn a lot about the strategies and projects that they've deployed over there, and for interested libraries there's an opportunity where they can engage with their creative or aspiring authors in their communities. Okay, so if you would like to learn more about the Indyreads initiative, if your library wasn't on the list on the previous slide, and you would like to get the ball rolling in regards to configuring your service, you can obviously reach out to me, but also on the State Library of New South Wales website, there's a URL on the slide, and the slide will be made available later on. We have developed an Indyreads portal, so you can learn the steps involved to configure your site with the Indyreads platform. There's also a section which covers frequently asked questions. Marketing material and collateral is also available on the website. So I recommend that you have a look at that. Okay, so I'll leave it there and end the presentation and answer any questions that you may have in regards to the project. Sorry, just going to get out of this. Okay. I'm just going through the chat.
I'm just going to unmute my audio briefly, so hopefully you won't get too much feedback. The professional development reads are completely amazing, so definitely consider having a look at those. And I'm just going to mute myself while Ross answers those questions.
Okay. There's a comment from Jen at Balharrie. It looks like they run a digital literary award, which they started a few years ago, and speculating that there's a great opportunity to tie this in with Indyreads. And certainly it's fantastic if you have ongoing initiatives such as that or relationships with writing festivals, etc. There's certainly a great opportunity to build up those relationships and to license the content and to upload it onto the platform. One thing I didn't cover today in detail was the license agreement. If anyone's interested in that, I think there is a copy of that available actually on the State Library's portal, but otherwise I can forward that to interested parties. Okay. So this is from Will at Shell Harbour. Does Indyreads envision hosting music content, and what form does licensing take? Is it a Creative Commons license? Okay. That's an interesting question. There is, I believe, in the US a dedicated platform that some public libraries have been using for licensing and hosting music content from their communities. Indyreads certainly has the capacity to do that, in that it will handle, I think it's MP3 or files. You could actually utilize our agreement to license that content from a musician in your community. Our agreement was developed by a law firm as such, so it's not Creative Commons, but it actually does have a lot of flexibility in regards to the terms and conditions that you can reach with the copyright holder. Okay, there's a question. Is deep integration of Spiders necessary for uploading a library's local studies content? No, that's not a requirement. So phase 2, we will be providing training on how to actually use the admin backend. So we will create a profile, a user account for you, which will allow you to simply undertake a bulk upload of content. So you have your digital asset. It could be a PDF. So the naming convention, you would have a unique name for that PDF. If there was an associated cover image, you would have the same unique name, .jpeg, and then you would tie that into the metadata in an Excel spreadsheet so that you can literally drag and drop those three components across into the admin portal, and it then knits all of those assets together so that they're displayed in the Indyreads portal. So hopefully that answers that question, but if you'd like to find out more information, feel free to contact me. There's a lot of comments saying that the people are excited about this and the opportunities for community authors.
I got back in right at the end.
How do authors get involved? At this stage, I guess we're still thinking about the workflow for that. Phase 3, which is the community author engagement, etc., in all likelihood is probably 12 to 15 months away. Whilst we would, I'm aware that there are public libraries out there that already have identified content within their community that they would like to license. So we would like to enable that, but we think it's probably best that at this point in time we just focus on configuring all the libraries before, because we have limited resources, before we start looking at phase 2 and phase 3. So hopefully in 12 months we'll be in a position whereby you can start uploading some of that content. You could probably certainly use our license agreement at this point in time to start that process if you were interested. Okay, there's a question from Sonia. Oh no, sorry, it's Maria from Inverell. Do we order the training kits from myself? Yes, you can do that. The other contacts are Catherine Bryant and Philippa Scarf, but you can certainly reach out to me. And what we'll be doing actually from next week is going through the list of configured sites which haven't received training and contacting you about the steps necessary to get the platform available on your website, show you where all the marketing collateral is, and the training material that Catherine and Philippa have been using for the face-to-face sessions. We'll rejig that and we'll forward that to public libraries across the state. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. And we're also, Ellen just reminded me that we're running online Q&A sessions. So they'll kick off probably next, well, we have one slated for next Friday for where we're testing that. So that's limited invitation there, but then going forward we'll have open invitations for Q&A sessions and we'll run those for as long as necessary. Any other questions?
So there are no other questions for Ross. I have to admit, I am a massive fan of Indyreads. I've had so much fun with the audio, but there's some really good professional development resources, including a reader's advisory book that actually with current exchange rates, it's probably worth more than $120. When I looked a while ago when the exchange rate was not as grim as it is today, it was worth $120. At this rate, it's probably worth $150 to $170. It's written by Joyce Sarix, who some of you would have heard presenting in previous seminars, memorably on literary and westerns as genres as separate and then combined ones, and then and with Neil Wyatt as well as a co-author. So that's one that you can borrow for professional development reading from Indyreads, which is a really good one to look at. Please join me in thanking Ross. As you can tell, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, so we'll be starting the 5-minute talk sooner, which will give you a slightly longer lunch break. But please join me in thanking Ross, because it was fabulous to hear all that's happening with Indyreads, as it is a very exciting platform. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Ellen. And I look forward to working with everyone across the state in getting the Indyreads platform rolled out. Fantastic. Thanks. See ya.
Okay, so I have noticed that the 3 5-minute speaker people are all online. It was due to be more, but some people have had to go on desk as they have numbers of people in their organisation who are self-isolating at present, or so it's a changing suite of things. So if Shazia, Jen, and then Monique can all be ready to present. They're each doing 10 slides in 5 minutes, although I think there's slightly different numbers of slides, but the principle is 10 slides in 5 minutes. And first up is Shazia from Canterbury Bankstown Libraries. Just to let the speakers know, you have 5 minutes each. There'll be a single sound, basically me flicking my microphone. At 4 minutes, 2 at 5 minutes, and then at 5:15 it will be continuous. Questions will be asked taken at the end for all the speakers, not between the sessions. So please use chat to ask your questions as you think of them, and if possible, say who your question is for. And I'm just going to check now that I haven't got Shazia on mute. I know. So Shazia has Shazia on mute. That's okay then.
Can you hear me?
It's a little bit uneven. Yes. Speak a little bit louder, please. And yeah.
Okay.
And you just, yeah.
Okay. Can you see my presentation started? Can you see the screen?
Currently it's a grey screen, but I think it's just loading.
Okay. All right.
Maybe if you start speaking while you're waiting to load, because
yeah, okay.
Otherwise it's been waiting 5 minutes for it to load. That's all. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Shazia from Canterbury Bankstown Library, and I'm going to present readers' advisory displays and activities at our libraries throughout the year. So Canterbury Bankstown Libraries organize several readers' advisory displays and activities, but today I'm going to share only 3 of them. The first one is November, and we have Library Lovers Day and Book Folding Workshop. Okay. So, for 2 weeks' time during November campaign, we promoted resources and collection related to the men's health through displaying the collection. And to keep library staff connected to the readers' advisory skills, an activity was also organized at our libraries. And what was the activity? Activity was just the photos we asked staff to display, male and female both. And of course, staff volunteered their photos for the activity. And it was asked to the library's users and staff members to put a mustache on the photos of their choice. However, first they need to display an item related to men's health from our library collection. And as you can see, gradually activity developed interest in staff and community members. And 1st week and 2nd week, and we can bear this slide. So next activity I'm going to talk about is Library Lovers Day. Started different activities and competition was organized. There's a first one was a book folding workshop in our Kempsey Library. Then in our Elwood Library has a collection of the Clifton Chronicles by Jeffrey Archer, which was a competition. Then there was another activity, share your favorite book or author and enjoy a chocolate. So at Kempsey Library Book Folding Art Workshop library invited lovers to learn an art to offer turning an old book into a creative work of art. And 19 people attended the workshop. As you can see, beautiful cake made by the old book. Then Albert Library ran a library lovers competition throughout the month of February. All was asked to like the post on Canterbury Bankstown Library Facebook, and in the comments type Albert Library or Library Lovers Day. And also they can visit Albert Library and write their name and contact number on the competition ticket in order to be part of the draw. This competition offers 2 prizes. First prize was entire collection, The Clifton Chronicles by Jeffrey Archer, and second was 1 hour readers study session at any of our 9 library locations, and a personal reading list to suit your taste. And the winner were announced on 28th of February. Then the last one was we asked library lovers to share the books they loved, write down the title and author of their favorite book, and they can take the one book suggested by others in the next box. And whenever they suggest something, they can receive a chocolate. And we received 80 suggestions in our box. The community themselves, we received a very warm and positive response from our community. They got involved physically in Libraries Lovers Day activities and also interacted via Facebook. We have a Facebook stats. 372 people reached to our Library Lovers Day post. Competition at Elwood Library attracted 300 people on Facebook. Activities suggest an item and dress-up story was the most popular, and 472 people reached to that post. And outcomes for the library strategies show the item circulation increase and community members engaged and visitor stats were up. It also boosted our library membership drive. Library display spread the awareness of our library collection. And last one, community interaction and involvement proved that they love our libraries. Thank you. That's Shazia.
Thank you very much, Shazia. It was really interesting to hear about that. Next up, we'll have Jen Martin talking about podcasts. Oh, and Shazia, could you, yeah, great, thanks, unshare, terrific. Thanks, Jen.
Hi, can everyone hear me and can they see me? Great, it looks like I'm connected. Cool, hello everybody, hi, talking to you from Darling Square Library. I'm just going to present. Okay. Oh no. Share your screen. Choose what you'd like to share. Sorry about this, guys. This was working perfectly when we tested it the other day. Let me just try once more. Okay, cool. Okay, sorry. Hot tip, when you're about to share, you need to click on the screen. It looks like I'm sharing now, yay, okay. Here we go, I'm Jen, I work at City of Sydney Library. Here is my presentation. Just to let you know that this is just a basic disclaimer that I'm talking about a podcast that I started today called Friends at the Library, but this is not affiliated with City of Sydney. This was a hobby project that I started with a friend. But But there are some good learnings, I think, that can be shared. If you've got any questions about starting a podcast, you can contact me on Twitter or via email. So let me tell you a little bit about Friends at the Library. Also just going to start a timer because I'm bad with time. Friends at the Library is a podcast that I started last year with my friend Jen Wong. She's a comedian and a journalist who works at the ABC, and we have a friendship based on reading. All we ever talked about was reading, so we decided we'd start a podcast for fun. And it wasn't a reader's advisory podcast, but as time went on, we realized that maybe it could be, or that maybe other libraries might want to start a reader's advisory podcast. So let me tell you a little bit about why a podcast could be good for RA. What I'm thinking is that conversation is at the heart of reader's advisory. We all know about the reader's advisory conversation, and those conversations with customers are so important, and are how we come to understand our customers and their reading habits. So since we spend so much time talking about books, why not share it with other people? And especially at the moment, it's such a timely point in our careers to start thinking about how we can extend our programming outside of bricks and mortar buildings. What ways can we tie in a podcast with other services that we offer, or replace services in the interim? You know, we're unfolding events mean that we're having to think about how we offer our services. So podcasting might be a good option for the future, and maybe we'll have a little bit of time to experiment and play soon. So let's think about what directions a podcast could take. If you were interested in starting a reader's advisory podcast, I would recommend that you spend a little bit of time thinking about what your objectives are. It's good to spend some time thinking about what a reader's advisory podcast could look like. There are examples. Book Riot has several reading suggestion podcasts. Unfortunately, they call them reading recommendations, but there are reading suggestion podcasts out there. I think as a group, we could probably develop some best practice for the best way to maintain our readers advisory values and guidelines as we move into the space. Another thing to think about perhaps is, who are your listeners going to be? And one way to look at that is to think about personas. Who out of your own library customers might listen to a podcast, and what might they want to listen to? Lots of you are probably Chat 10 Looks 3 fans. I know when I started talking to Jen about what we wanted Friends at the Library to be like, we wanted it to be friendly and intimate and like two friends talking at a cafe and sitting at the next table and overhearing the conversation. That may not be the best tone for your podcast if you wanted to start one in an official capacity, but it is worth thinking about tone. And it's also worth thinking about brand. So definitely think about your corporate branding and include your marketing and communications teams if it is likely to be an official podcast for your organization. But also simple branding tips include keep it simple. It can be a really simple structure. I think we started with just a general discussion, and then we talked about one book, and then we added reading suggestions at the end. Another really nice thing to do with a podcast to create a sense of safety or comfort in listeners is to bookend your episodes so you've got the same content at the start and the finish. So Friends at the Library starts with some really nice cello music, Yo-Yo Ma type, you know, just a few little notes, and then we just both say, hi friends, and that's how the podcast always starts. So it means that as soon as you plug in and start listening, you know where you are. You've created a sense of place around that audio landscape that you're offering to your listener. I've already said think about tone and feel, but yeah, I think you will know what would work for you as a listener, and I think you can also think about what would work for your customers. So the tech basics, it may seem scary, but it's actually really easy to start a podcast. You do need a little bit of technology. Jen and I use a Zoom recorder. I'm going to show you some photos of those in a second. And we use really simple microphones. We use Rode SM58 microphones and your basic XLR cable that you just plug into the mic, one end into the mic, one into the Zoom recorder. The Zoom recorder has a data card that saves the information, and then you plug that into your computer when you're ready to edit. Another option is to have a special microphone that's got a lightning connector for your iPhone. Both are good options. Editing happens after you've recorded. We use Hindenburg, which is a really great editing software program for podcasts. We went to a training session at the AudioCraft Festival last year and got some really hands-on tips about how to have a nice editing desktop. There are other options as well. You can probably even use GarageBand. And then the other element of publishing is the technology for publishing. So we use Libsyn, which means you only have to upload your podcast once. And then from there, Libsyn will push it to other platforms. So whatever your favorite podcasting is, that's where you'll get it from, Libsyn. And it's important to have a landing page. So you can use your official library website, but we use Listen Notes, which has really detailed summaries of everything that's on each podcast. It's really good for suggesting books in your collection or linking to WorldCat. And also keep in mind that you have to manually add your podcast to some platforms. So we had to manually add Stitcher, which is a really popular Android app, and we also had to manually add to Spotify. Okay, I'm almost done. Some quick photos. On the left of the screen, you've got your Shure mic that you'd plug into your iPhone, and on the right, you've got a Zoom recorder. Okay, and then I'm just going to tell you very quickly about how to make it sustainable. One hard thing about starting a podcast is they're always going to want a new episode, so you really need to think about how you might make that work, especially around your day-to-day work. I would recommend having a content calendar and kind of blocking out what you think episodes are going to be about. I would also recommend starting with at least 6 episodes under your belt before you even launch the podcast. Maybe you might even want to have 10 or a whole season done before you launch, and then that will give you time to create new episodes. We released an episode once a week, and it wasn't sustainable enough for us. Even though we recorded 2 episodes every Sunday, we ran out of episodes. So do think about a way to make it sustainable. Life will get the better of you. I think that you can also, sorry, I've just catching up. I think also another way to keep the project sustainable is to have evergreen content, but also topical content. So you can do lots of great evergreen content about favorite comfort reads, uplit, things that you can release at any time. You could have evergreen content about summer reads that also might be topical content because you bust it out at the start of the summer holidays every year. Also be prepared to think about what new books might be coming out. Maybe if the Hugos have just been released and you've got, a new list of science fiction, you can do a science fiction roundup episode. It's nice to have a mix of old stuff, new stuff. Make sure you include all readers, not just the ones who only like new stuff. Be flexible, be prepared to play around with the format of your podcast. You may decide that something else works better, but you can change it as you go. I think the important thing is to just experiment and play and explore, and also to use the passion and knowledge of your colleagues, because obviously we work with some very prodigious readers, some very passionate readers, and I think it's great to tap in. If you've got someone who loves true crime or horror or science fiction, get them involved, get them talking about the books that they love. And with the content that you create for your podcast, try to be inclusive and welcoming. We try really hard not to poo-poo anyone's particular reading tastes. We try and celebrate all reading so that anyone who's listening feels like that podcast is for them. And Becky Spratford's Rules of Readers Advisory are a really good place to start there. So I'm pretty much done, but I just wanted to say these are some podcasts that you can look at if you want to see what the lay of the land is. There's Get Booked from Book Riot, What Should I Read Next with Anne Vogel, which is a quite nice one. Book Riot has a Read or Dead true crime or crime podcast. Art podcast Trashy Books is about romance. Our Opinions Are Correct is about science fiction. Auckland Libraries has a really great series of podcasts, and Melbourne Libraries has a really great series of podcasts. That is a lovely librarian from Melbourne Libraries there. You too could be that person with the headphones and the microphone. It's pretty easy. I think that friends at the library might be looking for librarians to help us out soon. So I will definitely be in touch. And if you'd like to give it a go, you are welcome to get in touch with me. There are some upcoming learning opportunities that sadly may be cancelled in the coming months, but keep an eye out for Audiocraft. Follow them, follow Jess Callahan on Twitter. You'll find out what they're planning for the July conference. It is such a good professional development opportunity. And General Assembly does from time to time have podcasting for beginners sessions too. That's it from me. Sorry, I went a bit over time. It's been a bit of a crazy day here at Darling Square Library, but sending you all my best thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jen. That was great. And there'll be questions for when for after when Monique's spoken as well. But thank you very much. That was terrific. So next up we have Monique from Sutherland. Monique, oh great, that looks terrific.
Okay, can you hear me? No? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Monique. We're just not fully seeing your screen. It's gone to grey at present, like Shazia's did. But that's kind of around internet connections, I think. So
Okay.
that looks great now. Yeah.
Okay, how about I just read it out to you and you'll be able to have a look at the visuals later. Okay, so sorry about that. Sometimes you just need a simple and to the point answer to your most pressing questions, such as what should I read next, or how can I find my next favourite read? To assist with this dilemma and to help start a conversation about books and readings with our customers, Sutherland Shire Libraries created a deck of Library Oracle reading cards. Oracle cards can be used as directive tools, offering guidance, clarity, and a new perspective, often pointing towards something you already knew but needed an outside vision on. They can be used by anyone who is looking for answers to a question or who wants to make some sense or meaning from a situation. There are many different types of Oracle cards that come in all shapes, sizes, and functions. The basic setup is that they have images and words along with a book that explains ways in which a reader should interpret them. We're using Library Oracle cards as a fun way to explore new genres and find our customers their next favourite read by intuitively picking out cards and reading a book based on their card selection, or looking at all the cards and using these as a prompt to find the kinds of books that they might like to read. We have 68 cards in the deck, but there is room for more if you can shuffle them. And after the first event, we added 3 new cards, bringing the total up to 71 at the suggestion of our customers. These were holiday reads, page turners, and short stories. We also included a card called Staff Picks, which ties in with an ongoing promotion we have in our library of Staff Picks displays at various branches. The first event that we used our Oracle cards was for the Australian Reading Hour, and we called this event a day of reading dangerously. We made appointments for 15 minutes for each customer, but some did run longer as customers chatted with staff about books and readings and then went out to the shelves to find some books to take home. After selecting their cards, the attenders at this event were sent an email with a list of book links relating to the cards chosen. These titles were hyperlinked back to the library catalogue so they could explore later. Attendees were also invited to find further book choices by using our personalised reading suggestion service. There is a slide when you actually get to see this presentation showing you an example of what we sent to the customers after their consultation. This event was a success, so we did it again over summer, this time across all the branches involving all staff and calling it Find Your Next Favourite Read. Staff were encouraged to participate in the events and contribute book titles to the lists. We changed the appointments to 30-minute appointments and also tailored the lists so that customers received a list of 10 books in total across 3 or 4 card selections. If you are interested, you can make your own deck of cards. Firstly, just create a list of the genres, themes and subjects areas you want to include. A good place to find ideas and inspiration is in the Novelist Secret Language of Books that you can download from the Novelist template, as shown by Kathy Stewart in the first session. You can create a template in your favourite graphic design programs such as InDesign, Canva or Publisher. I used Publisher. We didn't need to use a council-style guided look, so I just created a template that I liked. The next thing to do is to find some images. There are plenty of free images available from free sites including Unsplash, Pexels and Pixabay. And I've listed on the PowerPoint some sites to explore with a hyperlink if you wanted to have a look. Next, you would add definitions to describe each card. I sourced some definitions from Novelist, some from online and some I created myself. They need to be attributed to the author. We did ask permission from Novelist to use their definitions and provided attribution on the cards. Adding these definitions also means that cards can only be created for non-commercial use. Now your cards are ready to print. There are a few different companies to choose from that offer a variety of finishes and card stock to choose from. You can also purchase box to store the cards in if you like. A deck of cards including delivery is about $50. When we ordered our cards, they took about a week to be delivered. I don't know how long they would take now. And we have a deck of cards at each branch of the library. You'll also need to create lists of titles available in your library collection. So I created 71 lists of at least 10 books each for each card and hyperlinked each of these titles back to the library catalogue. I saved each list in a separate file in Google Drive. This is because it's easy to share these lists via email. The customers can then click on the link to find further information about the book and request it if they're still interested in reading it. We've found that this is a great way to break the ice and get people to talk about reading. The cards prompt people to think about the genres and themes they like and encourage them to move outside their comfort zone and try new books when they intuitively select a card. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you very much, Monique. So please put your questions for about Monique. I've seen a few from Jen. So Jen, to answer those, could you please unmute your microphone and paraphrase the question so that it's recorded as part of the recording?
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so one question I had from Christy was, how long do you make your podcast? And we used, I guess, some really rough design thinking to make a decision about that. We just started to think about, well, how long are the podcasts that we like listening to? What kind of situations do people listen to podcasts in? And so we had a bit of information about that. At the same time, independent from friends at the library, my colleague Justin Lane and I, Justin's at Northern Beaches now, he works at Manly, but we did a survey at the time as well of all our staff at City of Sydney, asking them about their podcast habits. And they told us how long they like podcasts to be, things like that. So we had a little bit of data that we used to decide that 20 to 30 minutes was ideal, because we figured that that's a commute or doing the dishes or a bit of house cleaning. We didn't want it to be so long that people had to stop what they were doing, but we didn't want it to be so short that it was a flash in the pan. So I personally think 20 to 30 minutes is ideal, but there's a lot of really great long form podcasts as well. I'm not sure it's as appropriate for Reader's Advisory though. Okay, another question that I had from Amy Heap at Wagga Wagga was asking about whether or not a podcast needs to be in conversation or if you can do it solo. And there are some good examples of solo podcasts. One that I do really like is What Should I Read Next with Anne Vogel. And that's a really nice one. She's got really lovely dulcet tones. She has a very soft voice. And for those of you who talk to customers about audiobooks, you'll know that the voice is everything. So, yeah, some people just have a really lovely voice for doing it solo. And Amy, I think you would definitely be one of those people. Other questions that I had, sorry, I'm just looking through. Thank you to the people who say that they already listen to the podcast or are going to start listening. We hope that we will have season 2 out once everything settles down a little bit. Okay, Lauren from Wallara has asked, how do we know how many people are we listening to podcasts? That's the nice thing about Libsyn. So Libsyn gives you that data. You can run reports. So Libsyn is like that's another case for using Libsyn. Libsyn, that it will help you collect that information. It shows you who's downloading from multiple platforms. So we can crunch the numbers from iTunes versus Spotify. And we did a happy little dance once we realized that we had over 200 people listening per episode. That was a good report that we got from Libsyn. Sonia has asked the same question. How do we keep track? And the other question that Sonia has asked is, how has the podcast been received at my library? Because this is an extracurricular activity, a passion project or hobby project, it's not affiliated with my work at City of Sydney. I did keep it pretty quiet because of that, but people have been very kind. And my old workmates at Wallara now greet me by saying, hi, friends, because they listen to the podcast, so that's really sweet. I think how a podcast might be received at your library might come down to your relationship with marketing and comms. I would prepare a presentation, even if it's just a PowerPoint, including examples of other libraries that are doing it and including a plan for how you intend to implement the podcast and also how you manage to maintain your process and get it out regularly. If you present marketing or comms or your library manager with a plan for what you intend to do and it's well thought out, I think you have a much better case of getting a podcast off the ground. That was the final question for podcasting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I think there's a few questions for Monique as well in the mix. So Monique, would you be able to answer those, please?
Sure. I saw that I've got a question about if we have future uses planned for these cards. Yes, we've spoken to our local bookshop who is considering starting a small writers' festival where they're located, and we thought we might hold some sessions at that to encourage people to find some books to read and to get them from the library. And the cards, Amy asked, are the cards themselves generic? So you just update the lists as you go that go with them, and yeah, they are. They're generic. They just, some of them, like for example, romance, and then I have actually, and I've got chick lit and romantic comedy, so it's been broken down a little bit. But yes, they are generic, and we can just update the lists in Google Drive and hyperlink that back to our catalogue. So also get other. I'm trying to encourage other staff to add books to that list, and we try and just keep the most recent 10 titles chosen to send out to the customers, but we are keeping the entire longer lists in our objective file, so they're getting quite long. So that would be good for staff to reference and know what types of books we've got available in each genre, appeal, theme. So I think that was the only questions I had. Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much, Monique. And look, thanks very much to Shazia, Jen and Monique for presenting on those three very different topics. We'll be back at 1 o'clock, although it would be great if you could all be back at 12:45 to have a discussion before Becky comes online to present at 1 p.m. And it would be really good for people from 12:45 to 1 to discuss their readers' advice, their crime, and well, not their crime, true crime reads and horror reading, really focusing on the appeal characteristics, and remember, the emotion, not the plot. That would be terrific. Appreciate that so many of you have been able to manage to get online with us having to change from being on site to being all online. So I'll be back logged into the first session for this afternoon at 12:45. So feel free to come on in then, but it'd be lovely if you could come along then and have a bit of discussion like you would have had if you were here for lunch. And yes, you do need to click the new link because it's about how long we can video things for. So this afternoon there'll be two links, one for Becky because she'll be about an hour and a half all up with presentation and questions, and then there'll be the final session of the day on true crime. So look forward to seeing you all online later on. Have a lovely lunch break. Bye.